All right, guys, here we are back to talk about lifetime value. So, a little bit more of a specific technical KPI today. We want to be a little bit more strategic in this podcast as opposed to maybe conceptual or philosophical like we get in some others. So, what we want to talk about today is lifetime value and what that really breaks down into for us in personal training is how much value our clients see in our program that they're willing to pay for before they exit our program, right? So if your average client comes in and when they come into your program, on average, they are worth $10,000. They purchase $10,000 worth of services. That can be very, very different and mean a whole lot more for your business than if your average client comes in and is only worth 2 to 3,000, right? It's a measurement of how valuable your service is. Okay, so that's what we're going to break down and talk about today. So
I think it's really important too. I don't know how many trainers I've talked to where their least favorite part of the job is client acquisition, right? And trust me, I don't disagree. Sometimes that's not a lot of fun. So I think getting to a point where each client is not only they're going to get more out of it themselves, but you're also going to get more out of it for your own personal business and all your own financial goals. It does limit how much you have to spend acquiring clients and gives you more time spending time with clients, providing value.
100%. So, where we've seen one of our home clubs, grow so much over the last several years is not just because there's so many people walking in. There's not so much client acquisition going on, but every client that comes into the program sticks. They train at a high frequency. They train at a high dollar amount. They see a lot of value in the services. So to fundamentally break down the equation of lifetime value for a personal training client, it comes down to how much they pay for each service, how many services on average they engage in per week, and then how long they continue that lifespan of that client, and then any other ancillaries that we add in on top. So those four components we're going to break down each today on how to move the needle. So the first one, touching on how much somebody will be willing to pay for a service, right? So Tiger, to give you an example, you have a brand new trainer coming in, right? How do you coach them on that element of building value for their potential clientele? How do you go about having them set a rate for their sessions, for their services, and then increasing that over time?
Yeah. So, I learned this question from you actually that I do in every single interview. And I love it. So I'll ask a trainer, if you were going to charge somebody for a training session, right, or to work with you, let's say 1 day a week for the next 3 months, how much would you charge them for that one session per week? And oftentimes you get a really low answer. You'll get like $40 or $45. And I was actually just in Seattle last week, and that's what they were charging at one of the clubs there. And I was shocked to see, and that's sarcasm, that there wasn't a single trainer on the floor, and it was 10 o'clock on a weekday, early in the week too. I think it was Monday.
Oh my goodness.
So, and you'd expect them to be busy if they're only charging $40. So normally they'll tell you something around $40. And so then the follow-up with that is, okay, well, my trainers all start here at $75, right? And what is the service? Usually I'll ask them about the service they're going to provide at $40. So like, what all is that going to include? Then I'll tell them we charge $75. And I'll ask them, hey, what do we need to add to your services for you to feel comfortable with charging $75, right? So then it becomes a question of value. So it's like, how do I provide more value back to my client so that when they're paying me $75 for that 1 hour, I feel justified and confident when I pitch this to someone? I think that makes a huge difference for a young trainer. One, because it changes the expectation of what they're doing for a job, right? I think that's one of the quickest flips from like, oh, this isn't just a job that I'm doing part-time while I'm in college. Like, oh man, this is a career. I'm charging like career money. Yeah, you are. So that means you need to deliver like this is a career. And so we elevate our service in order to match that. One of the best activities I've done now, and I think this goes into like even the how long part, because I think this will help you out, is you ask your clients like, hey, if I were to charge X amount, right, more than what you're currently charging, would you still train with me? And if the answer is no, what would it take, right? So rather than asking yourself that question, why would you not ask the people who are already spending money with you what it would take, what they would want to see? And I remember I did this as a trainer 2 years ago, and I was charging, I think 75 or 85, and I was asking them about charging $100. And I think about 40% said like, yeah, I'll just train with you. So that was cool because that gave me some confidence. But then the other ones gave me some amazing criticism on how I could be a better trainer and how I could provide more value back to them in order for them to feel comfortable with that. And I think that allows you to elevate. I had a trainer recently do the same activity, and he had 100% of his people say, yes, let you charge $100. I was like, well, I guess you need to charge more. So I mean, definitely a quick way where if you're looking to increase how much a client's spending with you in that hour, you can find those answers out directly by asking yourself that question or asking your current clientele that question.
I used to ask those exact questions, and then two other just open-ended ones is we have trainers in our market that charge $150 an hour for their services. What do you think that level of service looks like that they're providing that you don't feel comfortable with just yet? And how quickly could you get there? So bridging that gap. And then two, very similar to what you asked, but what would I need to be charging per session for you to discontinue training with me? And then getting that dollar amount. I believe we had a trainer that did this years ago, and it ended up being like $120, $130 an hour, right? And at the time, this individual was trained 60 and was worried that their rate might be too high, right? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, those own perceived limitations that we put on our business aren't actually there in reality, right? And it just simply takes asking the right questions and clarity from the people that are willing to pay for our services to give us that confidence, that clarity, et cetera. So answering how much over time, a lot of those hypotheticals, right? If you can increase your session rate over time, you're increasing your average rate, your average lifetime value per customer, per client, and you're going to require less clients in order to build your business.
You get your same income, yeah, and you just charge more, essentially. Yeah. You deliver more.
100%. So after you increase, you have that one variable, how much each session is worth. How many of those sessions are you delivering per week? Okay. So Tiger, what would you say the average session frequency is for a client when they actually sign up for personal training?
So I think this is interesting because I know from an individual number amongst the top trainers at our club, it's pretty dang close to 2 times a week. Mm-hmm. But I know as an average across our club, it's 1.3. And I know typically as like an industry average, we talk about 1.5. So I think it's telling though that the trainers who have the most successful business have the highest level of interaction. Right? So you're working with a client twice a week instead of 1 day a week. I think this is awesome as a trainer because one, it usually means your client's going to make more results because they're getting more interaction with a professional who knows what they're doing. But two, it also means slightly less work on your end, to be honest. If I only have to program 1 client and they're training 5 days a week versus I have 5 clients training 1 day a week, I have to program 5 clients now. It's a lot more work. So I think increasing that is huge. The way you go about it, I think a lot of it starts in the beginning. So when you meet with your client, setting appropriate expectations. I just had a consultation recently with somebody, and I mean, clients love to call in and ask like, hey, how much does this cost? And I tell them I don't know because it depends on how often we interact, and I don't know how often we need to interact until I meet with you in person and see where you're at. And so being open and honest about that, where it's like, look, I have some people where I'll have them start less often, depending on if they have a background in exercise, et cetera. So I took them through their evaluation and we got done, and I was like, hey, I mean, I think you guys probably will agree with me that we don't have a lot of experience here. And so I'm going to need you guys to start out with a higher level of interaction in the beginning. Okay. Now, long term, we could look at interacting less often, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Right now, we need at a minimum, 6 months of probably interacting at this higher frequency just to get you to a point where you can be a little bit more independent and we're safe and effective. So I think that expectation setting is probably the first part. What would you say?
I think that argument is probably presented very well across the board by most personal trainers up front, where we might need a little bit more help out of the gate than down the road. The issue is typically we allow people to fall off that mark very, very quickly.
Too early.
So most people come in and their commitment levels at the highest it's going to be at the very beginning. Their excitement level is going to be the highest it is at the very beginning. So let's say they agree to train 2 to 3 days a week, right? On average, if you were to lengthen that time horizon out over the course of the year, most of those individuals are going to end up training less than 75% of what they agree to, sometimes even less. So to use an example, we had a club, a very, very busy club, a lot of clients, where they measured out, okay, what is each client's prescribed frequency? And they measured it out as like 2.2 or something like that. Okay, cool. How often have these clients actually trained over the last 12 months? And it was like 1.1. Now, the issue is most of these clients probably think that they're paying for twice a week. In their head. They've already made themselves okay with that investment part of it. They think that they should be getting the results of someone that trains twice a week. But in reality, they're getting the results of someone that trains half as much. they're probably less likely to even be coming in for their other workouts. And candidly, us as the fitness professionals, us as the leader, has allowed that to happen. So this club has seen massive growth over the last year simply by bringing their average client frequency from 1 to 1.4, right? They've seen what's that? I mean, less than 40%, but 40% growth on of their business, right? Or 0.4. What's that actually equal? Yeah, about 40%. It's
of their
big,
current business.
couldn't do math, but that's a massive growth in their business without even adding more
Yeah,
clients.
they didn't acquire anybody else, and they grew 40% essentially.
That's
insane.
an example of how they've grown their lifetime value in each customer, right? In order to grow their overall business. That means all the trainers are earning 40% more. That means the club's, of course, top line revenue is 40% higher. It's a win-win for everybody. The clients are seeing probably significantly higher than 40% more from a results standpoint. Is a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and we're going to see this across the board here, where all of these leak into each other really well. But I will promise you, a client who trains 2 days a week will train longer in terms of, I mean, that's what we're about to talk about next. So it's like, how long are they in your program? If they're training more often, they'll be in your program longer.
Yeah,
because the progress is better and the interaction's higher, and they feel more a part of it.
They get what they think they're paying for. They get the results that they think they should be getting for that investment. It's a win-win all over.
And I think the follow-up portion of that is huge when it comes to how often. Is when you're holding your clients accountable to that interaction, they feel, which, I mean, this is what you should be doing anyways, but you're delivering now on the charge they're getting. And so it's like, it's my personal mission, Karen, that you're going to train twice a week because I promise you that's what we're going to do. And I noticed a month ago, we only trained 6 times. So we're behind, and I want to catch up because I want you to make all this progress we promised, right? Huge value build.
For sure. And so if you've never done this activity before, I would encourage you to go and assess this for yourself. And oftentimes the first step to changing that is simply sharing that awareness and sharing that statistic with your team. So a lot of these trainers on this team in this club that I'm speaking about, they simply went back to their clients and, right, you know how many workouts we did last year, right? We were supposed to have 104, right? Let's say we trained twice a week, right? We only trained together 60 times. Can you believe that? We missed 40 workouts.
It's a D-. That's a D-.
Not good. Like, we need to make sure that we do a better job of this moving forward. And me as your trainer is going to no longer accept the false premise and all the stuff that you give me on us missing workouts, right? If you're going to be gone for a week, cool. We're going to train extra before or after you leave. But there's no way that we're going to be missing this many workouts moving forward. And that added value is going to be a game changer in your business. So we've talked about how much people pay per service, how many times they employ and use those services throughout a week. And then second to last part of this lifetime value equation is how long that client works with you for. So if you know the average client teams up in your program for 12 months, it's a very different, it's a whole lot easier to grow your program than if your average client only sticks with you for 3 months before exiting. So Tiger, explain a little bit about how you address that with your team.
So I think when we're talking about how long, I think, again, expectation setting in the very beginning interaction. So when you go through that conversion process is super important. Letting the client know that this is a long process, right? One of the best things I usually tell people is like, hey, like, don't get me wrong. Because sometimes people are like, hey, I want to do this on my own. And I'll be like, look, that's the plan. Like, I want you to do this on your own, right? But what I need you to understand is we're trying to get 10 years of experience on my end into you in a month. It's not going to happen. Right? If I'm going to give you 10 years of experience, I need a year to make that happen. And so I'll talk to them about like that longer timeline. In order to create actual true independence, it's going to be a very long road to getting there, let alone just to get through the small educational biomechanics parts that we love to obsess about. That's great. But just to get the behavior change, we're looking at a year, right? Where I need them to be locked in. So setting that expectations early is huge. And then it allows you to come back to that later. So if 3 months, 6 months down the line, your client comes to you and they're like, hey, I feel really good about everything. Like, I think I'm comfortable doing this on my own. Because I've set the expectation in the beginning that we're looking at a year, when we're at 3 months, I'm like, hey, we're 25% of the way there. I figured we wouldn't even have this conversation until we were 50% of the way there, right? But because I've had it in the beginning, I set the expectation in the beginning, I can be more honest now, and I can go back to that like, hey, we need to talk about doing this for a long period of time. I think sometimes trainers won't do that. They just agree to sign up and we're just going to start. And then we get a month in or 2 months in, your client's like, hey, I think I got this. I'm under control. And now you have no leg to stand on because you never told them initially how long this process was going to take.
I think it's a premise that oftentimes I'd say younger trainers fall into the trap of believing, and by younger I just mean like time in the industry. They haven't seen as many people fail, but where we think that people are 3 to 6 months away from being a permanent exerciser, which is just unfortunately not the case. Because if you walk on any gym floor in America, you're going to see the members that have been there for decades. You're going to see those that are engaged in some kind of program, whether it be personal training, group fitness, etc. And then you're going to see the ones that are just brand new and don't know any better. And everybody, it's almost, unfortunately, it almost becomes a joke like, oh, we're not going to see those people again in a month or two. And it can be really disheartening for like a brand new trainer, right? It discourages some people away from the industry, but it's also like a huge opportunity where we're going to be the difference makers for people when they come in. And how long is that person going to need to work with you to become a permanent exerciser? Most likely forever. And if you're a personal trainer that believes that not everybody needs a coach, I strongly encourage you to do some self-reflection or some introspection on what you're doing in this industry. The fundamental belief that will serve you as a personal trainer, as a leader in this industry the most, is to believe that everybody needs a coach. I strongly believe that. That's why our trainers have fitness managers, right? Or have a coach for them on the business side of things. If you believe that everybody needs a coach, you're fundamentally going to set yourself up for more success. If for no other reason than your clients stay with you longer.
Yeah, I think a lot of I hate to talk about bodybuilding because it has a nasty taste in my mouth because I kind of hate the sport now. But I used to partake. I used to be a bodybuilder, and I knew what I was doing. I work in the industry. This is my job. It's my career. I understand how to get in shape. I know how to do all these things. But at the same time, I knew if I was going to do a show, I wanted a coach, right? And it's just, you're so much more efficient. You're 10 times better. And so I think, again, having that belief as a trainer is always going to be a good idea to keep somebody interacting with them. I think a lot of young trainers, too, are maybe a little bit afraid of kind of positioning themselves in that position of authority to talk to somebody. The moment somebody decides they might want to cancel, where it's just like, okay, and we just end the conversation and we just go with it. And it's like, maybe we should sit down and have a conversation. And so what I've done is I've essentially, if a client's going to do this, I make them prove it. So like, we're going to have a plan. So if you're interacting with me 3 days a week and this person decides they want to cancel, first of all, I want to know, like, okay, one, what's your plan going to be? Like, do you know how to do programs? Do you know how to write? Do you know how to do all the base stuff? And then on top of that, hey, like, I've worked with you for 6 months now or a year now, however long. I'm not willing to see that go. And I've seen it too many times in this industry where somebody will make all this progress with me for a year and then I never see them and we're back at square one. And I don't want you to come back to me in 2 years. So what we're going to do is, rather than us go from working together 3 days a week to just never seeing each other again, you're going to work with me twice a week, right? And if you come and you do that third day on your own, then the next week we'll leave it at twice a week. But if you miss, the next week you're training with me 3 days a week again, right? And so you'll train with me 3 days a week and then we'll try again. And so you kind of set up an actual plan for them. I don't love it, obviously, because I'd rather them just continue to do what they're doing because it's working, and I hate going backwards. But I do think it's worthwhile to have that conversation instead of just being like, okay, good luck. Because then how much do you really care? You probably don't.
The tactical piece of, like, once you have a client that's already considering canceling or downgrading or whatever, is the exact same as a lot of the sales videos and stuff that we've put out. Like, if you can't, you must. It's cognitive distortions. It's going through all of that. So I'd strongly encourage you to go watch some of those on that piece. I think it's so fundamentally important, though, to try to, like, hedge against that.
You have to have the hard conversation first. Agreed.
Yeah, but to avoid them ever even considering canceling, is painting the long-term vision.
Yeah, I think expectations are good, and then following up on those, but also, like, continuing to paint expectations throughout. And I think that's part of the service. You're taking somebody who's never worked out, is 200 pounds overweight, and we lose 50 pounds. Great, but we're still 30% body fat, right? And so continuing to assign new goals, do retesting, showing up. It sounds weird, but showing up on time, doing all those other little things on the service side make a huge difference too for how long someone's going to train with you. Again, at the end of the day, 100%. If you want to increase your lifetime value of a client, so how much they're going to pay you across all of time, you need to change how much value you're giving to the client. The more value you give them, the more they're going to give back to you in terms of income, whether that be length of time, frequency, how much they pay on the hour. It was kind of funny. I was talking to my trainers about this. We did the math. When I did that $100 question with my clients, amongst the people that said like, no, you need to do something different in order for me to charge $100, the one that I got back the most was that you need to text me more. Mm-hmm. And I think that's crazy. But what we found out is that essentially every time I were to text a client, it would be worth $25 extra essentially on that session now. So sending a text is worth $25 of value to your client. Imagine how important it is to show up on time, to do retesting, to actually be coaching and be off your phone in the session. If just sending them a text throughout the middle of my day was worth $25 more for them. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So last component is going to be once you've kind of maxed out your time. Let's say you have your client 100% compliant with the frequency you set out with them. You have them at the max dollar amount that you currently feel comfortable with, or maybe you've just done a price increase, so maybe you do one each year. So that's set. You're not looking to increase that at the moment. And you have all of those things set. The only other way that you can increase the value that you deliver to that client is the things that you do in addition to the session delivery. Now, you mentioned texting, right? But that was a hypothetical value on that, right? It gives that client a buyer's profit or something that where they see more value than even what they're paying for. But in simply speaking on what they're actually paying for, you also have ancillary services and add-ons that you can make each customer more valuable to you, right? Mm-hmm. Not just to you and your program, but more value that they're willing to pay for. So those could include things like nutrition programming, right? Supplementation, meal prep. Maybe it's a instrument or service you provide, like we do heart rate monitors and Theraguns and recovery tools. We do things like we have the shake bar in all of our clubs. So as far as coaching in and adding those ancillaries, it's a cool add-on that our trainers can do where they're not confined in their income just by the hour, right? Let's say you have a client that you train and you train them $100 an hour and you train them twice a week, right? That's $800 in value each month that you train them. Now, what happens if they add an additional $100 in supplements? That means each session is actually worth $12 more, $10 plus dollars more per session, right? And they're getting that much more value. So how do you add in that component for not just new trainers, but veteran trainers as well, to where they can increase their value to their clients that way?
So if I'm thinking about ancillaries, I kind of think of, I mean, they're kind of add-ons, right? But to me, they're gap fillers, right? And so if I'm gonna get a client this service and we have their whole plan set up and we get a month deep and we're retesting, right? Because I think retesting is huge for add-ons. We go through this retest process and we see, some buckets are going up, some things are getting better, and then you have a couple things that are lagging behind, right? So if I see certain things are lagging behind, that's where I can look into my ancillaries bucket and see if there's anything there that I can do. So if it's, a group workout that I host, right? Let's say that I see that their exercise frequency is not quite what it needs to be. Cool. I'm going to put this person in my group workout that I have every Saturday morning that costs $10, drop in, right? That's going to add on top of my hour, but it's also going to help deliver that service that we talked about them getting in the first place. And it fixes their exercise frequency problem. So again, just like what we do with everything as personal trainers, it's your problem solving time, and ancillaries are your toolkit, right? If I see that this client's, lean body mass hasn't came up enough, but I know that our stimulus on the gym has been good because I'm with them, right? Seems like maybe our protein's too low, right? Their nutrition side things are going bad. So now I'm going to look towards supplementation. Hey, I can add a supplement in. They can take this protein. That's going to cost them $30 a month. But again, it's going to fix this problem we're now having. And at the same time, it's going to help increase the LTV, or my lifetime value of that client.
Most of our clients are going to end up trying solutions to solve their problems anyway. As many of those as we can bring in-house to control that stimulus, the better. So for instance, like the nutrition side, 70% of Americans take supplements. If you can have them do that piece with you, where 100% of what they're doing, you can audit how often they purchase and right, are they staying compliant with the frequency and the stimulus that you give them? Awesome.
Right? And what they're taking.
I
can't believe some of the things that clients are coming in and telling me they're taking some crazy root from Ghana that I've never even heard of. There's no research on it, or it's always something insane. But if I can actually tell them what to take, then I know exactly what's going in and where they're spending their money. I mean, honestly, I think if you sell supplements to your clients, you're probably going to save them money. I know that sounds weird because you're asking them to pay you for a product, but the products that they're paying for outside of the expertise and knowledge you have probably don't work. They're probably underdosed or maybe even overdosed, and who knows, right? And they probably don't even take them, so they end up wasting a ton of money. Versus if I know this client's taking my protein that I recommend, and if they're taking it every day, I know they have to buy it every month, so I can audit to make sure they're taking it every day. So it's controlled. Everything's controlled by somebody who's a professional in the space, rather than just somebody willy-nilly buying products off the shelves that do or don't work and not using them.
So supplements is a big one. It's super easy. We measure what we call supplement adoption rate. So of a individual's client roster, what percentage of them actually take and use supplements. There's a whole lot of other ways that we can audit the frequency, just like we would for personal training. But what are like some of like the basic staples, and how do you coach your trainers on recommending those?
The basic staples of supplements?
Yeah, like let's say if they have 20 clients, right? And so we want at least 10 of them to be taking supplementation. I think we could probably agree that far more than that should, right? What should those 10 be taking? If they're starting from zero, how do they start?
Okay. Well, I think, what is it, like 90% of Americans are protein deficient? So that'd probably be a start point.
100% of the ones I've made track on my fitness.
100%. Behavior change is never a 0 to hero game plan. It's always a step by step. If you're trying to add protein into somebody's diet, I think protein powder is going to be the quickest and easiest way to do it. If your like long-termist plan is to just be 100% getting your protein from food, cool. But let's do that over the course of 6 months, because right now you're like Karen, you're doing 40 grams of protein in a day and you need 150. So I think protein is probably the first one. I think just those little stats like that, though, and I mean, literally what I just told you guys is the same thing we can deliver back to our clients. If I'm going to, I'm going through this retest, I see their protein's low, I'm going to talk to them about the benefits of protein, what it's going to do. And I'm not going to say like, hey, like, would you be willing to do this? I'm going to say, hey, this is what we need to solve this problem. This is what we're doing. Right. Again, taking that position of authority, you can call it an assumed close. I call it just actually being a coach. So you tell them what they need and they're going to take it. So protein would be like the first one. I'm a big believer in creatine, especially for like older individuals, just due to like the cognitive function stuff that is coming out now in all the studies. But you have all the other benefits there. Again, you have the cellular hydration. I'm not going to get into all of it. We don't need to. We're going to talk about creatine on the podcast. Okay. Again, talk about the benefits, see where that plays a role. I mean, we're talking about problem solving. Again, you're going to see, recovery problems with your clients or X, Y, and Z. You talk about why the product's going to solve that problem. It's the same closing we do for everything.
Yeah.
Problem identification, attach the solution, make the solution quick, easy, and effective.
Yeah.
That's it.
How I always used to use to do nutrition coaching, and this was years ago before the app got really good, but MyFitnessPal, I used to have them do it on the computer and print it out and bring it in because it couldn't work on phones. But they used to bring it in. But I would also have them put in like a 6 ounce like piece of chicken breast or something like that. Okay, so they'd come in and they'd have their 50 to 60 grams of protein. They'd need 150, etc. I'm like, okay, Karen, use the same avatar you used earlier. All right, Karen, right? Would you rather, right? You see these 6 ounces of chicken breast, right? 30 whatever grams of protein. Would you rather eat 5 servings of these 6 ounces of chicken breast each day, or would you prefer if we could supplement in some of that so that we could make your meals a little bit more manageable? I'm like, well, I don't want to eat.
I don't want to eat that much chicken.
I don't want to eat 5 or 6 meals of chicken breast. Awesome, right? So we're going to make your shopping list, and the cool thing is your supplements you just pick up here every month, and then I can make sure you actually take them. Sound good? So my 3 were always protein, which was like the gateway drug, and then multivitamin, because I always felt like they helped my clients significantly with cravings. How I would articulate it, which is not the most scientifically correct, but when your body, when you're working out, do you need more nutrition? Yes. If you're trying to lose weight, do you need more or less calories? I need less, right? So how do we get nutrients without calories? We would have to supplement. Mm-hmm. And then when your body is nutrient deficient, that's in my mind, right? It was easy to articulate where a lot of cravings can come from. So if we can satisfy that with a multivitamin, that helped a great deal. Amino acids, simply for the fact that it made them drink more water because it made the water taste better. Mm-hmm. And creatine, because most people would just feel a little bit better in the cellular hydration piece that you mentioned. You've recommended multivitamin with like competitors and like for cravings and stuff like that, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So same thing, you want to find, again, attach it to the problem that your clients are experiencing and delivering them an in-house solution. They're more than happy to pay for because they're going to end up trying a bunch of other stuff anyway.
Yeah. Multivitamin's a tough one these days, though, because everybody takes one. They just take a really crappy one from Walmart that has like a 30% absorption rate.
They excrete 80%.
Yeah, it just completely goes away. So having that conversation with people is fun, but it's definitely worthwhile.
You're better off not getting lost in the weeds as much as you possibly can. What I would ask from individuals is, hey, give what I'm going to recommend to you a 30-day shot. Right? Give it a shot for 30 to 60 days, and then at the end of it, you hate it and you see no difference. You can go back to your whatever. The cool thing is that once they get started at it and you remind them each month and they buy every single month, it's easier for them to just keep doing it.
Yeah. Again, that consistency portion makes such a huge difference.
They've gotten into that new habit. So we mentioned supplements, but same thing goes with like meal prep service, right? They're going to eat anyway, right? They're going to have to purchase food. If you offer an in-house meal prep service, right? We have Geo Meals. For most of our individuals, it's far cheaper than for them to go to the grocery store, assemble it all themselves, do all of that on their own. So you're saving your clients money on things that they're going to pay for anyway, and you're adding significantly more value to your program. And with all of this, the more programs that your clients are engaged in, the more likely they are to stick with you long term, right? All of our clients that have been with us for years are the ones that engage in the most amount of services. And it's not just because they're the most fortunate or
it's certainly not just because they're the most affluent, because that's actually harder, I think, sometimes yeah, because they can be more stubborn. But the ones that are engaged in the most amount of programs that enlist your help on as many ancillaries as possible, they're typically the ones that stick with you the longest. And weirdly, they make the most progress too. So
odd. Last thing on ancillaries, you had mentioned some before that like they don't have to pay for, right? It could be group training, right? The group fitness programs in your clubs. Again, just engaging them into the community. Maybe it's not a for fee-based program. Of course, it could be that. I know we've used like small group boot camps over the years. We use those often for fee programs. But it could just be, all right, I've programmed you out to do cardio on the other 2 days a week that you're not scheduled with me, right, as part of the program. They don't do it ever because there's less accountability when you're not there. We outsource that to a group fitness program, for example.
I think there's a million tiny little things you can do for free that'll increase your LTV. I mean, I do thank you notes every single year for all of my clients at the end of the year. I think that helps out with my lifetime value. I mean, I let my clients bring their kids to training sessions whenever they want. So if you have a kid, just bring him. And they're like, well, what am my kid going to do? I'm like, I'm going to train him too. Him or her. So I have like sometimes like 6-year-olds or 8-year-olds training with my clients. If you have a family member from out of town, you can bring them for free. That's fine. And I'll even take them through a free one on top. Any friend you want, I'm going to take them through a free one. Even if they're from out of town and I know it's never going to like get me paid or anything like that. Oh, your sister that lives in Alaska needs a program? Cool. You're paying for training with me. I can get a program over to them. Right. So those little tiny things that don't really inconvenience you that much, I think are super, super worthwhile. You could do above and beyond stuff. I mean, I've went and cleaned gutters at clients' houses. I'm supposed to go move a couch today. I just remembered that. I need to call him right now. I need to go move a couch for a client. But those little things that might be extra, whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, these people are paying your bills. So I think they're the people you should take care of as much as you can. And looking for ways to add value to your clients is always going to come back to you in some capacity.
So some follow-up, some self-reflection questions is what can you do to become irreplaceable? Maybe it's move your client's couch. But right, asking yourself those questions. What do I need to do so where my average client sticks with me longer? What do I need to do where my clients would want to see more value in each service, pay more for each service? What would I need to do for my clients to train more often, right? Maybe upgrade or at least not come short of what they've agreed to. And then what would it take to get my clients engaged in more ancillaries, right? More things that add value to their program. So some good self-reflection questions, especially this time of year, starting it out, making sure that our business is more valuable, our clients see more value in us and what we do, and we have a bigger and better year.
Yeah. And last little tidbit, if your clients are spending a ton of money on you for Christmas, you're not charging them enough and you need to charge more. Hate Christmas presents from clients. This shouldn't happen. Be better.
It should only be the other way around.
It should only be the other way around. You should be buying your clients presents.
Love it. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Catch you later.